look a little more into this company, SES, that's when you find this crazy information. You can see they're presently teaming up with governments, including the U.S. government, and of course our MILITARY
has a new tool to ease tensions with crowds, but they're not using it just yet. Peter Ducey in advance tries it out for himself.
You can't see it, hear it, or smell it, but it makes unruly mobs do this. The Defense Department's active denial system, a non-lethal weapon that can be used to control crowds, secure perimeters, and keep pirates at bay. It could be a game changer.
This is one of the things that we can shoot first and ask questions later. Normally you can't do that.
The military says the active denial system is not radioactive, it's not a microwave, and it's not a laser beam. It's instead a man-sized beam of millimeter waves that can be fired from up to 1,000 meters away that are designed to get the subject, whoever's standing on this X, really, really hot so that they move. And it's about 50 degrees out here right now, but I just felt like it was about 1,000, and I've never been inside a tub that somebody dropped a hairdryer in, but I would imagine that that's what it feels like. After about 1.5 seconds, 1/64th of an inch of my skin was 130 degrees, but as soon as I stepped away, it was over, and the DoD says there aren't any lingering effects.
There's no cancer risk, there's no risk to a fetus or reproductive capability, it's just heat.
But the DoD admits this system does have a drawback.
We are propagating through the air. We are, therefore, relatively line of sight. And so we need to be line of sight with targets.
A prototype costs $10 million, and there are no plans to deploy one anytime soon.
When you look at tabs like this one that starts intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance missions, one realizes this company's products and services catalog looks like a Homeland Security dream or privacy lover's nightmare, depending on how you want to see it. And here you can also see on the SES website that they are using these satellites to beam none other than what? 5G. So, are these passengers getting sick from a VIRUS? That, by the way, they are admitting that the people on the ship haven't been tested for, or are they getting sick from millimeter wave frequencies being beamed at them even while they sit trapped in quarantine? So what about all those other cities? Other cities that people have left CH4 and still got their CV virus? Well, all the cities that I found that supposedly have this, this has happened to so far, they are people who are already openly advertising that they have FIVEG themselves. Places like South Korea, check. Hong Kong, check.
You know, all over the internet and every news media outlet out there, everybody's talking about the swine flu. I mean, it's, you know, it just arrives on the scene out of nowhere, and it is kind of suspicious. And my guest today is none other than Agenus Vonderplanets. How you doing?
Fine. How about you?
Very good, very good. Eating raw. First of all, one of the things I was amazed that I learned in the email was the nature of these viruses. Viruses are not living things, are they?
No, they're not. It's not like a microbe. It isn't like a microbe at all. They are protein waste products in solvent solution, and they can have animal tissue in them. Now, you cannot transfer animal tissue of that nature, any kind of an animal flu. Well, let me explain what a flu is. A flu is a solvent detoxification. A cold is normally a bacterial detoxification where microbes eat damaged tissue that is of a waste product, and when they consume that tissue, they can consume about 50 times their weight 24 hours, and they have a waste product of about 1 to 5%. So that's like you eating 50 pounds of food in one day and having a 1 to 5 pound waste product to deal with the next day. That's a good janitor.
Yeah, really?
So we want colds. Now, flus occur when people are so toxic that bacteria cannot help break down the toxic waste products because there's inorganic substances like chemicals from pesticides, inorganic fertilizers, food additives, Pepsi Cola, all those sodas which are just chemical, they have nothing to do with food. When those chemicals get in the body and saturate the body and they destroy the bacteria, then our bodies have to make a solvent or many varieties of solvents to dissolve tissue. So the body may make about 300,000 types of viruses that are specific to a specific tissue within a particular cell, so that the whole cell its integrity isn't disrupted. So the whole cell doesn't die. It's just cleaning out, let's say, the veins in a particular area of the cell, whether it be the veins for neurological functions or lymphatic, which is cleansing, or the blood itself within the cell. So those are specific cleansing viruses for specific areas in the body. Now, no time does it ever get to the point where you have more than, let's say, 3 viruses at a particular time in any particular body.
Okay.
Now, when we talk, if you're in a laboratory looking at it, there's nothing live there. You've got soaps, you've got solvents, just like we have soaps and solvents to dissolve grease off of your garage floor from your car. Now, what happens when you use a solvent, you use water in relationship with it because water is the main solvent on this planet.
Universal
it rains,
solvent, right.
Dissolves rock, plants can eat.
Right.
So water is our main solvent. If you look under an archaeological book, the first thing listed under solvent is water.
Right.
So we mix a compound of proteins or chemicals which with water create a dissolution of substance. In this particular case, let's say the swine flu, you're talking about a specific tissue of a pig. And of course, a pig is not going to have a virus unless it is so toxic from poor feed and vaccines and all kinds of medication that it can't use its natural bacterial cleansing.
And that obviously is happening because if you've ever seen animal husbandry, how it relates to swine, I mean, they feed them garbage. They literally feed them, garbage. Everything that people throw away and is rotten, they feed it to pigs. We have swine flu has arisen because we have sick pigs out there who cannot. The necessary viral response is inadequate for them to take care of their own bodies, so they manifest this swine flu. Correct? I mean, that's
correct.
Okay.
Now you can have 300,000 varieties of swine flu because of the different complex 300,000 different types of tissue to be cleansed within a pig, just like within any other animal organism. However, they cannot cross species.
So how did we get swine flu then?
It's been made in a factory and injected.
Okay. So in theory, a virus, first of all, there are good viruses. Obviously, as you just
all
described.
viruses are good viruses.
All right. So they're obviously necessary responses to something that's happening biologically in us.
Correct.
And so
viruses have no nucleus. There's no respiratory system. There's no circulatory system. There's no digestive system. Viruses are not alive. That's like saying Tide soap is alive.
Okay.
They're not alive. They are solvents. They are soaps. Well, what's happening is, like I said, we have colds, which are mainly bacterial. which go in and feed on toxic tissue that's been damaged. Waste products that we don't eat well enough, we don't eat all raw, and therefore we accumulate toxicity. So bacteria have to come in and eat that waste products because we can't keep up with all the waste.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that's what a cold is.
Okay.
A flu is mainly viral. Some bacteria some areas of your body may not be so contaminated that the bacteria, natural way that we cleanse with bacteria when we're overloaded with toxicity or waste products, bacteria will help us. But when we are so toxic that the bacteria are poisoned by the tissue from chemical inundation, then we have to make solvents. Each cell makes a solvent.
Gotcha.
Each cell makes a soap to help clean itself.
Okay.
And it's a union. It's like a factory. Particular cells get together and say, let's make this for us to help clean us. So they're making a soap to do that. So there's nothing dormant about it. It's just that when the accumulation of waste is so great and you can't use bacteria, then the cells make a solvent.
There you go. Okay.
And that's a flu. That's a virus.
Now, I want to start back at 1976, Agenus. What happened in 1976 with the swine flu vaccine?
Well, I was 29 and living in California at the time. And a Dr. McBean from, I forgot her first name. She's an MD. She and Ida Honoroff, who was a consumer advocate and was nationwide syndicated on like 3,000 radio networks.
Right.
Those two women showed that the swine flu was a hoax, and that the swine flu vaccine that Ford and Rockefeller pushed through, David Rockefeller was our vice president and owned controlling stock in many pharmaceuticals. They were behind this swine flu thing. Even Gerald Ford went on and received his swine flu shot. Of course, David Rockefeller didn't. And they showed that the swine flu was a hoax and that the vaccine was going to harm and kill people.
And it did, in fact. Didn't some people die? I mean, a large number of people died from the vaccine. Isn't that right?
Well, there were 3 that died right there at the pole immediately after they got it. According to Ida, I did a radio show with her. She had the figures that showed 2,300 people, elderly people, died within 2 weeks of the shot as a result of the shot. In other words, they didn't have the flu before they got the shot, and then they got the swine flu from the shot. That is the only way that a human being can get a bird flu or a swine flu, is if it is injected in them. We do not have those tissue. Once a animal product goes into our stomach, it no longer holds the animal's tissue. It completely dissolves it and makes it into human tissue. So there's no way we can get a swine flu or a bird flu, avian flu, any other flu. Years ago, they used to blame it on races, the Spanish flu, the Mexican flu, and stuff like that.
Right.
Then when Rockefeller and Carnegie started taking over the universities in the early 1900s, shortly after that, after the Spanish flu incident, they started blaming everything on animals. Monkey flu, monkey AIDS, all this stuff. They're always blaming an animal, a natural creature. They're always blaming nature. You cannot get a virus into another animal. Viruses are cellularly produced in their whole form. So if a human cell creates a virus, it can only be done inside a human body or in a test tube where you have human cells.
So there's no cross species
of flus. You can't do of viruses. It's impossible. Any kind of flu is the same thing. When the climate temperature is right, certain tissues will cleanse. And they may go in a 7-year cycle. They may have a 6-month cycle. It depends upon the tissue and how contaminated it is. If certain tissue needs to clean out every 2 years, it will create, and you can't use the bacteria, your body will create a solvent, a virus, that cleans that particular tissue every 2 years, every 6 months, every 3 months, every 7 years, every 12 years, depending upon that tissue and how contaminated it is. You cannot, herpes, that's all a fiction of the pharmaceutical industry to sell drugs.
So in other words, if someone has a herpes, let's say a genital herpes,
yes.
Wouldn't they be able to transfer it to someone else, especially if it's a man to a woman, since the inside of the vagina is basically like mucous membrane? It doesn't have the same barrier as, like, it doesn't have a